Hey there everyone, welcome back to Gamevine, and my name is Dave.
And I'm Tiffany.
And today we're going to be doing a review about quilts. What's the name of the game today?
This is Patchwork.
And give us a kind of briefing of what to expect from Patchwork and your expectations going into this game.
This game's a lot of fun with multiple pieces. It's a lot like Tetris. You're going to put a lot of pieces onto a board and try to not leave a lot of spaces, but you're also going to be concerned about moving about another board piece over here. Details probably forthcoming. It's a lot of economy going on about buttons. It's a lot of fun to play. There can be some strategizing. We played a couple of times. It's been a blast each time.
Yeah, and so when you seen this game, what did you think it would be like? What, like, your first impressions?
I thought this was going to be a lot like Tetris and a lot like trying to keep track of the pieces, that this was going to be not so much competitive as it is more your own personal challenge of figuring out where pieces should go, kind of how you should move around this oval of pieces, and just kind of getting a feel for also a pretty quilt. Like, you're making, the pieces are really pretty.
It's wrapped
and
an adorable theme.
Yeah, and they're each different, so the pieces, each one is individual and unique. And so putting them together is kind of, each time you're going to make a different quilt, and I was excited the first time we played it, and I'm still excited when we go to play it. We've played it like 4 or 5 times now.
Yeah.
And it's still fun.
And so, and this game is basically, it's a 2-player game, right? And it's a designer based on the name of Uwe Rosenberg, I'm pretty sure I said that correctly. And he designs my favorite game, Caverna. So I went into this game with some high hopes. 2-player games can be kind of a tough sell, unless you have a really cool person to play them with. And so Patchwork, even though it has this veneer like thin theme, it is an adorable theme, and I don't think it's utilized enough. So that's what we think about the game going into it. Now let's show you how it's played, but before we get into that, let's show you the content that come into the box, and then we'll get on to what we think about the game at the end of the video. So let's go. Alright, so these are the components that come in the box of Patchwork. A lot of cardboard and a few wooden pieces. First we'll go over just the player boards here with a hue of yellow and green. They coincide with the other player markers. This is a 2-player game after all. And then we'll go over to the actual kind of like timer board. This is double-sided, which I appreciate. They both have the same amount of spaces, but you can do the festive side here with the quilt, or you can go with the straightforward one, which I don't know which one I would prefer, but I do appreciate that. Now let's go over to the meat and potatoes, the cool little Tetris cardboard pieces. Every design is different. There are the same shapes that do appear, but they have different kind of abilities, you know. The button here is the cost and the time. We'll get into that, what that does a little later. But the cardboard is thick and well produced. I really appreciate that, and I think it's really cool and festive. Then we have these little leather pieces. We'll get into what these are a little later, but again, also well produced. Let's get into the buttons. They have increments of 1, very little tiny buttons here, 5, 10, and the big 20 right here. The special cardboard piece, we'll get into what this does when we go to the how-to portion. Then we have the few wooden pieces. These are the yellow and green little player markers you'll keep on the timer board. And then you have the wooden pawn here, which is going to be in the game board. I'll show you what the game board looks like. But these are the components. I like them overall, pretty well produced. So now let's show you how this game is played. Let's go. Alright, so this is the game of Patchwork setup. Now, for the sake of space, I don't have all the quilt pieces out, but you would have them set up in this oval kind of here, and then you would have the wooden pawn in front of the smallest piece, which is this 2 here. You give each player 5 buttons, and then you set up the player time board, I'm going to call this here, with the player markers and the little leather patches, and give each player their little board that they got to cover, and then you're ready to play. Now, the name of the game of Patchwork is to cover the entire board, because at the end of the game, each open space is going to be worth -2 points. The way that you win the game is to gather as many buttons as you can. Now, these are the way that you get points, and or to cover your whole board so you don't get those negative points with these quilt pieces like so. And you're going to continue to buy little pieces with buttons, but it's kind of an economical game. You have to determine and crunch the numbers and think about the net that you're going to be getting with these pieces, because the coverage might be worth it, or the time might be too much. So with that being said, what can you do on your turn? You can do one of two things. The first thing, of course, is to buy a piece of quilt with your buttons. Again, like I said, you have 5 buttons to start off with. And say if the yellow player wanted to buy this small piece right here, it would cost him 2 buttons and 1 time. Now, what is time? That is represented on this board here. Every time someone buys a piece, they have to move on the time board that many spaces. So he would pay 2 buttons, and then he would move 1 time, and he would place this anywhere that he wanted. It doesn't have to be a part of the extending quilt. He can put this right here if he wants, and he can flip it, he can turn it any way that you want. You can just do any kind of combination you want to fit the pieces onto your quilt and cover as much space as you can. So that is the one thing that you can do. And the second thing that you can do is, say that you have ran out of buttons because you bought so many quilt pieces, you can take your player piece and move 1 ahead of your opponent and get that many buttons according to the spaces that you move. So in this case, with the green player, he would get 2 buttons. Now this might help, and especially if your opponent bought like a big 7 time space, that's 7 buttons for you. Now that is the basics of the game. You can do those 2 things, but it gets a little more in depth. So when buying a piece of quilt, you can only buy the first 3 in clockwise order. So in this case, she or he has the option of buying any of these. So at that point, with the time, the other thing is you can have multiple turns. So say I bought this for the green player and he puts it on his board, he would move up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then let's say Tiffany, she would buy this one worth 2 time and put it on her board like this. She would only have to move her thing 1, 2. Now, anybody who is behind continues to go until they are ahead at least 1 space. So she would continue to go, having the option of 3 pieces right here. She can buy this little straight piece worth 3 time and then go 1, 2, 3, and she can continue to do that until again she is 1 space ahead of green. Now, what are these little buttons on the track? Well, those are associated with the quilt pieces that have a button on them. Every time that you move past one of these, you get that many buttons. So in this case, Tiffany would get 2 buttons if she would pass that right there. So the pieces right here are pretty expensive that have buttons on them, but again, this is an economical game, and the more buttons you have and the faster you have them, the more that you're going to continue to grow and get points that way. So again, that's another way to get points other than covering your board. So the other thing that is on the time board are these little patches. Now, when a player were to move past the leather little piece, he would gather it and have to immediately place the patch somewhere on the board. Now, whenever you buy a piece, you have to immediately place it. And whenever you pass one of those leather patches, unfortunately, sometimes you would want to save it, but you have to place it immediately. So that is basically everything about placing and buying and the time board. And again, the other thing that you can do always is advance 1 step ahead of your opponent and get that many buttons. So you'll continue to do this process, going around here, taking multiple turns or taking 1 turn, going around the time board, collecting as many buttons as you can until each player has reached his last spot. Because again, just like one player can have multiple turns, one person can end their experience or their portion of the game faster than another player, and the second player were to continue to play and buy pieces until he was done, and then you evaluate the end scoring. So end-game scoring is really quite simple. All you do is add up all your buttons. They're positive 1 point. You get one more income at the very end of the game. But any of these buttons on the board don't count towards your score. But say if you had 21 buttons, that'd be 21 points. But then you do negative 2 points for each square that you have open. That's so hard to say. So it could take away your 20 points. You do have another thing that you can get bonus points towards, and that's the 7-7 marker. That's if you have covered your whole player board. I haven't seen that happen often, but it is possible to, and I think maybe once in my life I've seen it happen. So once you've done that, the person with the highest score or the best negative, because I've seen that happen, wins the game. So that is simply the game of Patchwork. Now let's get into what we think about the game and give this game a grade. Let's go. So that was Patchwork in a nutshell and how you play it. Now let's get on to our opinions. I'm going to throw it over to Tiffany. She's going to give it a letter grade and or a percentage like we always do on Game Vine. So take it away.
Yeah, I really like this game. I give it a 76 out of 100, kind of C. I think it's really playable. You can keep coming back to it. There's a lot of fun that can be had strategizing and looking at the different pieces. You can even kind of go around the board and think about what pieces your opponent needs in order to fill the spaces on their board, and take those pieces so that they can't have them, and then increase your odds at the end of the game when things get scored of them having these empty voids of space that they weren't able to fill in because you stole their piece.
Sure, yeah.
So there is a little bit of friendly competition that can be had,
It's
and
like an accent.
yeah, you can. Because there are these tiny pieces in this game that can fill some of these holes up, and without those, you're going to lose some points at the end if you don't have them. So you can strategize and kind of horse around a little bit. You don't have to, but if you want to be a little bit competitive, you can, and that's nice. We did find when we move around on the sideboard piece, where you're keeping track of your timer and your moves, that the little spots that these patches are on, they look like they should be spaces.
Right.
It can be a little confusing when you're counting out your moves, while you're taking your turn. It looks like a space. It'll trip you up for a second. That's okay. It kind of tripped us up a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe that might be some house rule you want to make it an actual space. We've played a couple of times where it took us a long time to get around this spiral and into the center.
Yeah.
We've played a couple of rounds where it only took a handful of turns to get around and into the center, and if these were actually spaces...
That's 5 extra
yeah,
timers.
that would be some extra space on the board.
And to be honest, I mean, did we ever, in the 5-6 games that we played, we never accomplished this, did we?
No, we never completely filled the board. So the special piece truly is special. You may or may not get it. You might need to have some house rules in order to get it.
Right.
But it will be something to aspire to. And one day we'll get that piece.
Just with 7 buttons, huh? Wow.
Yeah. Now, all that being said, there's a ton of strategizing you can do. We've tried playing a different way each time. Sometimes it's a little bit smarter to go after just get a lot of pieces that have buttons on them on your board, because then every button you hit, you're gonna keep re-upping your button stock.
So the faster, the better.
Yeah, and the sooner you can get all those pieces, sometimes that's better economically. Other times, maybe you want to kind of sandbag and you want to go for all the cheap pieces and try to cover everything. Sometimes maybe you just want to kind of horse around with the other person and try to take the pieces they might be after. But it really is a lot of fun. I think this is something that, I might not play it a couple of times every day, but if I played it once every day, I really wouldn't be mad.
True.
It's a lot of fun, and each time it's a different game. It's always something fun to look at.
Absolutely. It's never the same quilt.
Yeah, it's never the same quilt. It's never the same moves on the board. There's some room to adapt to this game. You could maybe make some of your own custom pieces. You can make a couple of your own house rules. I think it's a lot of fun. I probably will end up playing this quite a bit.
Would you recommend it for gamers or like new gamers or?
I think most people will find something that they would like about this, whether you're a new gamer, whether you're somebody that has played a lot of games, if you're just trying to boost your collection.
Genders?
I think both genders are going to find this interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe for different reasons, strategizing versus the fact that this actually is an attractive game.
Yeah.
The pieces really do look nice. There's a lot of detail on
Yeah.
it. They're sturdy. A game like this could have been used with pieces that were flimsy and stuff, but I am putting a lot of pressure on this, and it's not moving.
Some cardboard.
It's thick, it's sturdy, the stuff that's on it, it's not going to come off. The ink and the colors and the design of it is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's quality pieces. And it's also fun, like the little buttons and the little like markers for keeping track of stuff.
Yeah, it's like poker chips.
It's sometimes a lot of fun to play with it. So I do think that it's pretty much good for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be fun for kids. It's fun for adults. I think my grandmother would get a kick out of something like this because she actually makes quilts.
And that's the goal that modern board games are trying to accomplish. That's what I like this. So, you have anything else that you want to kind of throw out that you like about this game? Pros or cons, either way.
I think that mostly sums it up. I think it's fun. It takes up a small amount of space. It's very easy to learn the rules to this. It took us 2 or 3 minutes to kind of go through it, and then it's quick to put away.
Yeah.
Just a lot of good things about this game, and yeah, I'm gonna end up playing it a lot.
Yeah. I like Patchwork too, so I might as well just throw my grade out there. It's just a tad bit higher than Tiffany's here, and it's a 79%, which is a C+. Oh yeah. There was a bit of hyperbole in here for me because he's not my favorite designer, Uwe, but he designs my favorite game, so I'm like, oh, well, this should be interesting. And the two-player dynamic also made me kind of like weary. Would you think that this game would play with multiple players better if they were like an expansion?
Yeah.
When they add more pieces and maybe a third-player board? This could be a kind of fun 3-player game, right?
Yeah, and even at that, you could buy 2 of the game and
you could
play it like that too. Whether they do an expansion or not, no, I think it would be great to play with more than one person.
But what does that mean for this board right here? Then would you, when you're moving forward, would you move to the closest person and then move ahead of them like that? That's something that you would have to house rule. But again, this game is so adaptable. I think that's something that you could.
I think that would make sense. You would be able to use this sideboard and keep track of the pieces. You might have to paint the 2 pieces so they're the same yellow and orange.
So a lot of the things that Tiffany said, I love this game. It's easy to learn. The time to play it is very fast. And if you have another person that's dedicated to that time, I've never had this game fail. And I had a male show me this game at a convention. I've seen videos for it, but I wanted to play it, but it was kind of hard to get, but now it's readily available. And he had buttons that his grandmother gave him, and he made this kind of collection. So hitting on the note that she said, you can craft and do many things with this, and I would keep an eye out because we like this game enough to do a what I like to call a spice up your life video. And we're gonna do buttons for this and do it in different increments, and she has some ideas, and that excites me. So I would keep an eye out for that video, and we're gonna make buttons, and maybe we'll get even more extravagant. And she was talking about making cloth pieces in the shape.
I think it would be so cool to make special pieces.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. But this game is really easy. I think new players are gonna like it. Both demographics like it. There is no reading required. It's almost language independent, as long as you can see the numbers. So again, age limit is kind of variable there, depending on if they can grasp the concept of numbers. But I like this game a lot. I came in with a little bit of hype, but it did deliver on what it was. And I like different themes like quilts and stuff like that. I really don't pigeonhole myself. So if I see a game there's games out there that have perfumes, and you literally can scratch and sniff, like in this game. We're kind of getting meta here, but I like ideas like that, and where people might turn up their nose at something. I think this one really deserves at least a single look, because I think you'll play it again. So that's what I think about it. That's what she thinks about it. You can give out a few little cliff notes at the end if you'd like, but other than that, we can kind of wrap this video up. Do you have anything else you want to say?
I can't really think of many cons about the game.
Which is true.
It's easy to talk or listen to music during doing this. I mean, a lot of other purely strategy type games, sometimes having conversations, you can't really do it. This is nice to relax to. You can kind of carry on conversations. I really can't think of anything that's really negative about it or any cons about it. It works for people. I think it would work for pretty much anybody. And it's a lot of fun to keep coming back to.
Right, and it's not mind-blowing. I mean, 70% is great, and I mean, it's, again, in that kind of realm of games that, like you said earlier, that you would want in your library, you know, just for that kind of niche. So, but thank you so much, everyone, for watching today's video. If you are a new watcher, please click like and subscribe. That helps us grow and keeps us keeping on. If you are a continued watcher, well, you are the lifeblood, like I always say. But until the next time that we see you, I've been Dave.
This is Tiffany.
And have a great rest of your day and a great time with all the games that you play. You see it here on the Game Vine. We're out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.